In the age of ancients, the world was unformed, shrouded by fog. A land of grey crags, arch trees, and everlasting dragons. But then there was fire.
During this age of ancients, there were no souls roaming the land, and thus the dragon statues existed as everlasting, devoid of life and death. They are not immortal, as the concepts of life and death themselves did not yet arrive. Fire came as the last of the pure, intrinsically natural elements. It brought duality to the world, altering it to its core. Its light became life, the embers that naturally traveled upward through the underworld and emerged from the archtrees imbued the dragon statues with souls. Souls are a complex element of nature. They mean life, memory, conscience, warmth, and light. By itself, it is the opposite of dark. But in nature, both coexist as integral parts of the cycles of the world. Meanwhile, at the very bottom of the world, a few embers got caught within the earth, and from those little chunks of soil were born the first of the humans. At this time, mankind was a meek and frail kin, much like those that will be called hollow in future times. Hungry for more light, yet vulnerable to the enormous stretches of fire, they searched the vast caves for more stray embers hidden underground. The first human to find a substantial shard of flame buried in the ground was remembered as a furtive pygmy. That pygmy brought the newfound shard to its kin and divided it among them, and from that interaction the humans entered a new stage of evolution. To be clear, all men were once furtive pygmies. The one who was remembered as such was not special in this way. In fact, it may not even have been one single individual who found a shard and spread it with others, but multiple at similar times and different locations. The name of furtive pygmy is more of a symbol of humanity's primal ancestor than anything. Having acquired the first of the so-called Lord Souls, mankind quickly developed their relationship with the world. It was during this period that clans, hierarchies, and culture arose, and with all that, the race for more Lord Souls, for more power. However, the humans, not as meek as they once were, wanted more. They desired to reach for the heavens, to escape their confinements in the depths of the world. And that was the main purpose of the greatest of all wars, the war against the dragons. The opening cinematic of the first game informs us of the main events that took place during this transitional step for mankind. However, the tale that is narrated to us by an unknown, elderly woman is heavily propagandized. It omits, mystifies, and desynchronizes history. The first and most blatant form of propaganda comes with terminology. Gods do not exist in the world of Dark Souls. At least, not in the way as is understood by most. All humans share the same biological origin. Gwyn and every so-called god is descendant of the same kin, all descended from the hollow creatures that came from the dark. That is not to say that there aren't many beings of extraordinary power who come in many shapes, but that they are not special in their godhood. The war was fought by an united mankind. The forces of Gwyn, Nito, and the Witch of Izalith, and other clans of humans fought as allies, and it was for that reason that they succeeded in an impossible feat against the direst of foes. Yet, just joining their forces was not enough to defeat their enemy. They had to plan a strategy if they were to have a chance. First, Nito unleashed his miasma of death and disease to weaken the archtrees, which served as nests to the dragons. Then, the witches of Izalith burned them with their hellfire. It was only after this that mankind was able to emerge through the surface and fight on land. Armies of humans engaged in direct conflict with the weakened and distressed ancient dragons, but even then, it took a score of their own to slay a single enemy combatant. The war lasted for centuries, and both sides were shaped by it. In the case of the dragons, biologically reshaped. The stone ancient dragons, the direct manifestation of the everlasting dragon statues of yore, had gone mostly extinct. Each of their corpses that fell to the ground served as a bed of new life. Their remains spawned rivers, plants, and animals, and some of it birthed wyverns and other dragon-like life forms. In fact, the whole world was going through a transformation, ever increasing its complexity. As mankind was conquering the surface world and building their civilization there, conflicts started to emerge within their own. The want, the struggle for more power never ceased. When the tides of war seemed to have calmed down, the empires of humanity expanded their domain and influence, and it was during this period that humanity's first and second sins, as they were later known as, were committed. Gwyn, with the help of Sif, the Scaleless, devised a way to extract the souls of men to fuel the sun, his large soul, which was cast into the sky. Together, they created the dark sign and marked mankind with it. That would ensure the humans would thrive on the world's surface, disabling the natural cycle from exerting its influence, which would mean the flames would eventually return to their base at the depths of the earth. That was how Gwyn acquired his deific title of Lord of the Sun, Lord of Light. Posing as the deific leader of mankind, Gwyn decides to proclaim an official order of unity as a cynical gesture of internationalistic intent, and thus it is founded his Order of Knights. One hero of some of the main factions that fought for humanity was elected. Siran, the assassin from Ulasil, Artorias, the paladin from the Catacombs, Guv, the archer giant from Izalith, Ornstein, the representative of the godly allies of Gwyn, and Faram's best dragonslayer. That was when the Way of White religion was founded by the paladins of Nito, who, by this time, may already have been known by his deific name, Lloyd, as a means to escalate the ordeal. The Curse of the Undead, as it was named, served as a link to the souls of man and the sun. Through this link, embers were gradually drained, and should the man die, their inner fire, their soul, would burst into contaminated sparks that would ascend toward the sun. Should a man interact with a soul that was afflicted with the curse, his soul becomes marked as well. So-called firekeepers were instructed by Nito's paladins to spread the mark of the curse among men, so that their souls are to be consumed by Gwyn's sun. The plague of undead began, and churchmen filled the hearts of men with horror and dread, so that they may join their crusade, the undead hunts. And that was how the curse spread out throughout Lordran. Within the world of men, there was an important group of nobles who did not condone such horrible deeds. The nobles of Karim, who would later be commanded by a deific figure known as Valka, the goddess of sin and punishment. In the meantime, in response to Gwyn's empire, Izalith devised their own means to spread their influence. The witch would employ the Lord Soul to birth a new form of life. She constructed a colossal emerald dome around her civilization. The soil of which was densely packed with corpses and skeletons of ancient dragons, rested within their central archery, and imbued said archery with the Lord Soul, effectively transforming himself into a new form of being, a bed of life, recreating how life first arose in this world. The Bed of Chaos, as it was known in history. The underground city of Izalith suffered an immense transformation. Its water became red and hot, its roots became burnt, and its inhabitants became deformed by fusing with all manner of organic material. It was a tragedy of epic proportions, yet it succeeded in its purpose. The Bed of Chaos was not a mere monster, but a conscious ruler. From its power, a new culture arose. As is known by history, the birth of the chaotic beings, the demons. There seems to be a few types of creatures who are considered to be demons. Demon is essentially a propagandistic term to refer to the inhuman creatures of Izalith who antagonized Gwyn's empire. Those who did not align with Izalith in their war against Gwyn, such as the giants, did not get labeled The two most consistently referred as so are beings who were reshaped and deformed as a result of the eruption of the chaos of Izalith, such as the Ceaseless Discharge and Quilag, and the demon statues, beings sculpted from titanite and organic remains, like chimeras, with the purpose of creating the strongest possible life forms, who were brought to life by the bed of chaos. It is not clear if all of them were deliberately sculpted. Grus and swamp bears, and other later descendants, may have been born in a more natural way out of the organic remains within Izalith. In fact, some Grus appear to worship the statues, as though they were their deific ancestors. It might be the case that after the chaos of Izalith, the beings who were naturally born there, from the bed of chaos, were not regular humans anymore. There are others, however, which were born of the chaos of Izalith, but seem to not be necessarily considered demonic, such as the reanimated corpses of dragons, like the ones colloquially known as dragonbutts and the undead dragons. Some of the parasitical creatures, such as maggots and leeches. It can be said that all demons are parasitical creatures, since they all depend on their artificial sun to live, which is why they fade away and become statues again with Izalith's fall. And most importantly, the giants. To be clear, the term giants does not mean the same as exceptionally big human. There are many examples of humans who exhibit gigantic proportions seen throughout the trilogy, but they are all biologically the same as regular humans. The giants, however, have many different, unique characteristics, and even vary in form within their own kin. They tend to possess a lesser intellect to that of a human. They tend to lack distinguishable facial features, and they tend to have stone or wooden bodies, as they were made from dead dragons and archtrees fused with human bodies, like Frankenstein's monsters. Despite obvious contradictions, geopolitical relationships between rising empires began to assume more complex forms. The men from the surface, commanded primarily by Gwyn's royalty, began to extract titanite from the corpses of felled dragons, and sold them, primarily to Izalith, through a deep system of underground tunnels, later closed and reformed to become mere sewers. In return, Izalith provided them with ultimate weapons, crafted by the blacksmith deity, a giant blacksmith demon, and, more importantly, enslaved giants and other demonic beings who would serve as guards, workers, and soldiers. While there may have been a superficial spirit of cooperation between both empires, a Cold War was taking place. Eventually, the relationship imploded by the escalation of their arms race, and from it, a new great war took form. The war against the demons. Gwyn's army of Silver Knights was sent to the underground to vanquish Izalith. Despite the war raging on both sides, there was never a definitive winner, and even more strangely, both sides would be forced to begrudgingly join to fight a foe greater in influence than even them both, to fight against a prophecy. The common man faced more despair than ever before. Their life, which used to last for much, much longer, unless taken by force, was now fleeting, fueling a hungry sun. That they did not entirely realize, but they knew how it felt to lose themselves, to lose their memories, to forget who they are, to stop thinking, to want for souls of others. Darkness was artificially imprisoned at the bottom of the world, shackled by the curse. It resisted its unnatural confinement by attempting to spread itself and consume all it could reach. Gwyn's actions did not relinquish the dark, quite the contrary. By halting the natural cycle of light and dark, they corrupted it and caused it to go wild. The abominations that spawned from the want of the abyss were, in a way, Gwyn's creations. No matter how he tried to end them, they would never appease the desire, since the fire, the souls they craved, were hovering far above their reach. The same would be the case if it were the other way around, as observed in the profaned flame, imprisoned at the bottom of Irithyll. Just as the abyss did before it, it craves for the balance of nature. It craves for proper harmony within duality. The very concept of time is corrupted too, fractured by the curse. Reality would spread itself around timelines which would all eventually converge toward the future, toward the sun, as if they were seeking the natural state of things, a balance of light and dark. That is the explanation for the converging worlds seen in Dark Souls 3. The main forces who could fight for the common man, the army who had fought the dragons before, were banished to supposed paradise faraway land, its construction ordered by Gwyn, the ringed city. There, worship of Gwyn's figure was incentivized by ornate statues and iconic imagery. A perfect replica of Anerlondo's royal palace was built, and inside it slept Filianor, a daughter of Gwyn. Amidst the shadows, Sif was devising a counterplan, a conspiracy to mend mankind and dragonkin, and to restore the balance of nature. Gwyndolin, a hermaphrodite, the manifestation of the sacred alchemical rabbis, born of the chunk of Gwyn's soul that was granted to Sif, having all in his mind, planned not a war but an elaborate coup. He would ally with the wisest of the descendants of the dragons, who were also his own kin, the serpents, and he would promise them that their wishes would be fulfilled. He would also promise the man that their wishes would be fulfilled. Having the essence of Gwyn, personified by the sun, coupled with that of the dragons, personified by the moon, Gwyndolin was to be the utmost legitimate ruler of a new era to come. Gwyndolin is, in fact, a perfect homunculus created by Sif, the alchemist, the scaleless dragon, who was operating as a devious double agent. In the age past, Gwyn cooperated with Sif, bargaining with him to betray his kin, aiding in their extinction. It hurt him deeply, however. It may be that Sif is attempting to repent from having fallen to the Faustian bargain that ended up being insufficient anyway. The sin Sif committed was that of the human, wanting to become whole, the sin of greed. Sif and Gwyndolin's plan was the Firelink conspiracy. As a means to counteract the strong pull of the sun, they would eclipse it through an occult ritual that involved the sacrifice of powerful, sovereign souls of the undead, ingeniously utilizing the dark side's hole not to send energy toward the sun, but to extract from it, to an enormous bonfire that would rest under a dense layer of retracted time. This place, this dimension that resided in the future, was called Londor. In order to attract sovereign souls, Gwyndolin told a prophecy under the persona of Velka, an illusion of himself, a persona of his fabrication, his feminine half, a prophecy that beckoned all the chosen undead from fractured timelines to undertake a journey of pain and death that would ultimately strengthen them, also that they could become martyrs at the ultimate bonfire.
Great Sovereign, take your throne.
The first to link the fire, however, was no mere nameless undead. It was Gwyn himself, the Lord of the Sun. He was judged by Velka and sentenced to collaborate in the undoing of his great sin. Cursed and banished to die among his most loyal Silver Knights in London, Gwyn was now proclaimed the Lord of Cinder as a mockery of his past deific title. Alongside the prophecy, Velka's many subordinates would work in secrecy to craft the path and to assist in the journey of the chosen undead. Miniatures of the fire-linking bonfire, which are also fueled by remains of the undead, were forged and deployed all throughout the lands. Stone replicas of a great blacksmith who would forge for the undead were positioned around Lordaeron. Rings of sacrifice and other types of magical artifacts were hidden and sold around. Purging stones were developed to prevent loss of self. Great crows, servants of Velka, would transport undead who were put to rot in cells for their souls to be stolen by the sun, a desperate measure to combat the sun's draining, to the Firelink Shrine, the sanctuary of the bearers of the curse. As for the world of men, Gwyndolin carefully infiltrated it and ruled it from the dark. He fabricated a mythical past for himself as the supposed lost son of Gwyn. Known as the God of Illusion, God of the Dark Sun, Gwendolyn commanded the Dark Moon Blades, an esoteric police force that would punish sinners. For a long period of transition, he prefers to rule from the shadows, concealing even his fake persona through an image of Guinevere and other godlike figures. From this point on, Velka was essentially dead, and Gwendolyn took her place. And in the distant future, the additional layer of concealment ceased to be a necessity, and Gwendolyn ruled Anor Londo as well as its neighboring territory, then called Irithyll, openly. The journey of the first generation of chosen undead not only served to fuel the bonfire, but also as a vehicle to enact punishment upon the greatest of sinners. Nito, the Witch of Izalith, and Sif all had their souls taken from them and used as fuel for the Lord Vessel, the tool that opens the gate to Londor.